Greetings, loyal viewers, and welcome back. Oh boy, there has never been a time so far in my life where I've felt so old. And I know it may seem hard to believe, what with this face, but I'm actually 25 years old. In fact, I turned 25 back in June earlier this year. And sure enough, today is also the 25th birthday of an important part of my childhood, that being Crash Bandicoot. But what are my more distinct and overall thoughts of the franchise, at least from what I've played? Well, that's what this quick little video is going to be about. So, sit tight as we go over my own personal history with Crash Bandicoot. So let's start with the first one that I remember playing when I was like, I think 5 or 6. I don't fully remember, but the first one I remember distinctly playing was Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. And I remember liking it a lot. In fact, replaying it again years later as a teenager, this particular version I haven't played since I first completed it, I think at around the time I finally finished high school. But I like it a lot. It's honestly a really good sequel to the original, which we'll get to in a moment. That being followed up by, of course, Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped, or Crash Bandicoot Warped. Honestly, it's kind of a, well, it's either Crash Bandicoot 3, Crash Bandicoot Warped. You get the idea. Point is, this is the one that I then played second, and between the two, it's kind of hard for me to pick which one I like a bit more. Because they're both really, really good in my opinion, but I guess if I had to pick one that I like more for the things that I like overall, not to say that anything, well, maybe a couple things, not to say that there weren't a couple things that I disliked in Crash Bandicoot 2, in fact there were quite a few things, but 3 I felt had a bit more of a consistent quality to it in some areas. While 2, in my opinion, definitely had the better overall soundtrack, 3, I think, just nailed certain places more that I think just slightly edged it out as being my personal favorite. Now, make no mistake, I love these games with all my heart. They are what really helped to define my childhood, along with the Spyro trilogy, which, to get it out of the way, personally, I've always been a bit more of a Spyro fan, even to this day, which kind of makes me a little bit sad that lately he's not been getting a whole lot of love, outside of maybe the occasional cameo appearances in other Crash games, like in Nitro Fueled or Crash on the Run. But that's not to say Crash didn't contribute to that, because he absolutely did. Which then, of course, leads us to Crash Bandicoot 1. This actually isn't the third game in the entire series I remember playing. That one, I guess, unfortunately, goes to The Wrath of Cortex on PlayStation 2. That, though, the version I'm holding right now, which is the current one that I own, being the Xbox original, but just roll with it. I'll admit, as a kid, I do remember liking it quite a bit, albeit not as much as 2 and 3. But replaying it again back in like 2016, give or take, and even 100%ing it, yeah, I kind of wonder what kind of high fructose corn syrup I was on to think that this was actually good. Do I think it's a dumpster fire? Not exactly, but I don't think it's good either. As for Crash Bandicoot 1, don't get me wrong, I think it's a fine game, but compared to its sequels, I do think it's a little bit clunky and dated to the point of ever going back to it, especially completing it, because, oh my god, completing it. Okay, let me just say for the record, the very first time I played this was when I borrowed it from one of my cousins, when I was like 7 or 8, I believe, and even back then, with my skills having developed a bit since then, this thing, for me, when it came to getting some of the collectibles, like especially the color gems, I found to be absolutely miserable. In fact, I didn't come back and complete this game until years later when I was in high school, back in like 2013. I think I was wrapping up my junior year in high school when I finally played and completed this game. And while I definitely liked a lot of it, let's just say before Crash Bandicoot 4, at least according to a lot of people, I'm going to get out there right now, I've not played much of Crash 4. It's about time, so Don't expect me to go into depth about that one, but from what I have played, I definitely think it's fun. Really, really fun. I love the art style, most of all. I think it's really, really good. Toys for Bob's been getting gypped a lot lately. Also, ignore my tablet in the background. But anyway, getting back to it, this, to me, at least back in the day, is what I'm sure for a lot of people what nowadays feels like with completing Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about time. At times it can be fun, but at other times it can be absolutely miserable, especially with levels like Slippery Climb to get all the collectibles. So, I don't regret 100%ing it, but it's not something I'm gonna go out of my way to do ever again. As for other Crash games I have played, I can't seem to find my physical copy of it anywhere, but I have played CTR when I was a kid, and even replaying it again years later as a young adult. I think it was a really good final note for Naughty Dog to go out on. I think it was a really solid car racer. In my opinion, though, I do think it was made even more fun with the remake by Beanox, who, funnily enough, also remade tracks from the, I think it was like the 4th or 5th Crash Bandicoot game I played. I think it was 5th. That being, of course, Crash Nitro Kart. Now, this game, much like with Wrath of Cortex, I do have a lot of fond memories of when I was a kid, and at the very least, I do still get some enjoyment out of playing this, as opposed to Wrath of Cortex, replaying it again years later. But, much like with Crash Bandicoot 1, I just don't really see much of a point in going back to this anymore, especially with the tracks being remade, and in my opinion made more fun in Nitro Fueled than they are here. Like, no disrespect to Vicarious Visions at the time, who, funnily enough, also remade the Insane Trilogy, but they just didn't do the best at being able to recapture the fun of CTR overall. They tried, and in some places they succeeded, and in other places it definitely feels like they could have used a little bit more time. And now, to wrap this up, I mentioned Insane Trilogy earlier. That, of course, is the remake of all 3 games by Vicarious Visions. I think this is a really, really good remake. Like, in my opinion, this, for the most part anyway, is the definitive way to play the original trilogy all over again, especially the first game, because I feel like it takes the control scheme of the first game and I feel updates it just enough, but also keeps the control schemes across all 3 games uniform, but still keeping what makes them unique. You know, kind of like with Crash 2 introducing the moves that Crash would use going forward, like the slide and the double jump and all that jazz. So, yeah, in my opinion, this is the definitive way of playing this. Also, funnily enough, there's actually 2 new levels added into this package. One for Crash Bandicoot 1 being the then infamously scrapped level Stormy Ascent, which, let me just say, playing that level normally isn't too bad, but getting even the gold relic in that level, oh boy, that was absolutely miserable. Like, I think it took me in total around 2 hours to get that gold relic alone, and it was not fun. It was painful. Like, unbelievably painful. And then, of course, there's the brand new level made from the ground up by Vicarious Visions Future Tense in Crash Bandicoot 3. I do really like that one, though, again, much like with Stormy Ascent, it's also not a very fun level with even getting the gold relic on, because everything about it just isn't as well built around being rushed through as some of the other levels are in the game. So, yeah, overall, a really good remake, and in my opinion, was a pretty good stepping stone for the really good top-notch remakes that we have gotten since. From the Reignited trilogy to Nitro Fueled, to the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 remake, to, of course, the Demon's Souls remake by Bluepoint. Needless to say, we're living in a very interesting era where we're getting a lot of remakes of beloved classics. Now, if only Sony would get around to doing the same with Jak and Daxter. But anyway, that's my history with Crash Bandicoot. What did you think of it? What were your first games, and what was the last game that you remember playing, besides the more recent titles? well, go ahead and let me know down below, and let us all continue to keep the love and passion of Crash Bandicoot and even Spyro the Dragon alive for a really long time. And until then, I'm King Gargantuous, and take care.